There was someone else in here before.
Come on over. I'll take your time. Take your time.
Hey.
Okay, thank you all very much. I was here and you weren't. So.
Let's go.
I apologize. No, this guy. Let me know when you guys are ready back there. I know it's. The musical number?
It's almost St. Patrick's Day.
It is, I tell you. That's one thing that disabuses the notion that I may be Irish by genetically. I'm tone deaf. That's
No Danny Boy.
no Danny Boy here, I tell you. The fields of Athenry will have to wait till after this is all over. We gather for that evening. Yeah. I promised the press who's covering it.
Looking forward to it.
I know, I have to believe it.
Okay, Senator, thank you.
You all set? Well, let me first of all thank all of you. And just to, I've already put out a statement earlier this morning indicating that we're on a positive and optimistic track to coming to a conclusion of the financial reform package in the Senate. And while not wanting to sound like a mutual admiration society, let me also commend my colleague from Tennessee, Bob Corker, for the work he's been doing. He and his staff have been great partners over the last month or so as we've tried to fashion a bipartisan bill, a consensus bill. We're not there yet, and as I've said over and over again over the years, having learned at the side of Ted Kennedy, bills of this magnitude, nothing's done till everything's done. And so you have to continue working. And while we've made great progress, we need to move along. And so I intend on Monday, as I mentioned, to put out a proposal, put it on the table. And that's really the next step. I've been promising that to many of you in this room and others. We'd have a proposal on the table. And each week we let it slip a little bit because we thought we could get a little further along in developing a consensus product. And so the committee print, or the proposal that I'll offer on Monday, does reflect a lot of the ideas that Bob Corker and others have brought to the table. But clearly we need to move along. What I'm facing mostly is what I call the 101st senator, and that is the clock, and particularly in an election year. And that 101st senator, that clock, it becomes a rather demanding member because as time moves on, you just limit the possibility of getting something done, particularly a bill of this magnitude and this complexity. And so if I don't put a proposal out, I want to try and get at least through the committee, if we can, before the Easter Passover break. We'll come back almost to the middle of April at that point. And so we have a limited amount of time in April. We all have, of course, the break in May, the break in July, the break in August, and obviously an election year. So the time is shrinking to get this done. And so the idea of putting this proposal on the table is not a reflection of something breaking down, quite the opposite. The process is moving along very, very well, but I felt it was important to put a proposal on the table, short of a proposal that reflects some broad bipartisan agreement at this point. So I'm grateful to Bob Corker. And let me say the principles, the major parts of this bill that we're working on are four. There are a lot to the bill, but these are the four major points. One is we intend to stop forever the notion that some institution, financial institution in this country, is just too big to fail. That's going to end in this bill. And we've reached broad consensus on that, and my thanks to Mark Warner and Bob Corker who worked on that particularly. That's a major, major achievement in this bill, that never again should the American taxpayer be exposed to the tune they were over the last couple of years because institutions became too big to fail. Secondly, we want to have an early warning system, a systemic risk, so we can pick up these drifts when they occur, either by institutions or by products that put our financial system at risk. That already, we have a lot of consensus around that idea. It's not complete. Obviously, additional thoughts are coming to the table. Thirdly, we want to be in a situation where we're dealing with the derivatives, these exotic instruments. Jack Reed and Judd Gregg are working very close, not there yet, but getting to it, on how we provide that transparency, that accountability as a major source of the factors that contributed to the economic difficulties in the country. And clearly, fourth, the issue of consumer. How do we better protect our consumers, including the possibility of having a strong agency that will be able to engage in the kind of protections that consumers need. And we're not there yet on that either, but we're getting there. And so all of this is going to be further advanced, I think, by having a proposal on the table. Otherwise, it's a lot of conversations that go on. But I think both members, as well as others who have a strong interest in this, on Monday we'll have a chance to look at a document and react to it. And my goal is a week after that or so to begin a markup of the bill, utilizing the week between the proposals down to continue the conversations we've been having, to bring ideas to the table, with the goal I have in mind of coming out of committee with a consensus bill, is to the extent I can, and then coming to the floor of the Senate. So again, I just wanted to come over and express, one, my sense of optimism about this. I know there's a tendency to look at these statements and wonder if there's been some retreat. There has not been, in my view. To thank again all members of the committee. I've had tremendous support in the committee over the last number of weeks on this issue, and to particularly recognize, as Bob Corker, because he has stepped up and did come and said, I'd like to try and work to get to what he described, getting to yes on a bill. And that's been so valuable in this process. So with that, let me stop and address any questions you may have.
How do you plan to treat the consumer piece of
I'm sorry?
How do you plan to treat the consumer piece of your bill?
Well, we're working at it.
Alone, or will you include it in
Well, again, as I say, I can't negotiate here at this table. That's why we have members and we're talking. But obviously, that's a major issue. We're working at it. A lot of progress has been made on it. I think trying to find a proposal here that would enjoy broad support. I don't expect necessarily universal support, but broad support.
But
So we're
Senator
getting there.
Corker laid out what he thought, that there had been a deal on, which was, creating it within the Fed and having a council that could have veto power.
Well,
Is
there's
that
a lot.
going to be in your bill?
Well, we'll see. Again, I'm not going to sit here, as I said to you, put it out on the table today, but obviously take a look at what's out there on Monday, and I think you'll see, and all titles. There are about 13 titles to this bill, and it's going to be a very different proposal than the one I proposed in, was it October, November, I think, when we laid looking to staff to remind me what month it was when we put the proposal out in November. So it'll be changed from that proposal, obviously, but I'm not going to negotiate here in your presence, and I think you understand.
Senator
How much
Corker
is
also
that?
said that.
It would be a travesty. Senator Corker said it would be a travesty to have the bill marked up in a week, and that you had the intention of marking up that quickly, that it requires more time to be marked up.
Well, it may. Look, again, because all of you want me to give you time schedules, and I've tried to do that, and then I realized by doing so I was creating my own set of problems for myself by giving it dates and times. So again, all of this is obviously subject. I'm more interested in getting this right than getting it at a certain date. But obviously I need to set marks in order to try and drive the process. I've been involved in a lot of markups of bills over the last 30 years in this institution. I've learned a lot from Democratic and Republican leaders and chairmen over the years, and one thing's fairly consistent. You need to move things forward. You need to set proposals on the table to get people to react to them, and then set times in which you try to go forward. Obviously that can slip based on where we are. And again, getting this right is more important to me than getting a date. But I emphasize again, I don't have a lot of time left in this Congress. I think all of us who've been in this room and around the years know how this can go by very quickly. And look how long it takes almost even a nomination on the floor of the Senate to go through. Sometimes days just to go through the procedural motions to get to a vote. So I'm hoping to avoid a lot of that if we can develop a consensus.
And how much?
Senator Corker also suggested, he suggested that it was reconciliation on health care that was putting the pressure on you and raising the question of whether health care has poisoned the well.
No, I know that's obviously an issue we're all aware of here, but let me just say the administration cares deeply about this bill, and they want a bill, and we're constantly in touch with them. I've already talked today to the Secretary of the Treasury. We talk almost every day, as I do the White House. The Chief of Staff calls, what's the status? Where are we? So they have a great interest in moving forward on a bill. And there are other matters, obviously, that are on the table, and I've been involved in that one as well. But again, I come back to you. The real problem I'm facing is that clock. And again, that 101st senator that, I don't know, it was Howard Baker that coined that phrase, or Bob Dole, or George Mitchell, but the 101st senator is something that if you've been here any number of years, you can appreciate in an election year what happens. The longer you get into the year, that 101st senator can all of a sudden play havoc with trying to get something done.
So reconciliation is not an issue?
I'm sorry.
Senator Dodd, in going to the markup to try to get progress made through the markup and onto the floor, how concerned are you at holding on to that bipartisanship? We've seen certainly with healthcare, the Gang of Six, that dissolved. Do you think that this could go that same way?
Well, I hope not, and that's what I've been trying to do, because I fully acknowledge and recognize that I always think the best products in my years here, and every major bill I've been involved in, everyone without exception, involved having a partner. Going back to the days of child care legislation with Orrin Hatch, family and medical leave with Kit Bond and Dan Coates, there's not an exception I can think of that I was able to move anything without that relationship. And I think that's true here as well. A bill of this complexity, I've mentioned the four major pieces of this bill, and there are other parts of it, obviously, but the major pieces require cooperation. It doesn't happen. And I'm not sure you get as good a product without that either. It isn't just a political factor. I think it's a substantive evaluation as well. So I'm determined to try and get that, fully recognizing that if I don't, it's going to get a lot harder to get a bill done, given the time constraints. So obviously my relations for it, and I talk to them all the time on trying to move forward. And again, this bill will introduce, this proposal on Monday, will reflect a lot of what those conversations have produced over the last several weeks.
Senator,
Take a few more
what kind of
questions.
a message does it send to consumers and to Wall Street that